diverse leader with extensive experience spanning years of industry academia relations, talent engagement, performance management, employer branding, HR analytics, organization assessments and design, job evaluation and analysis, career management, competency modeling, HR systems and L&D, serve as a speaker at various forums like People Matters Summit, Bangalore HRD Conference, NASCON, CII Diversity Forum, ILO Diversity Network, World HRD Congress, Global Benchmarking Network, and several colleges and university programs. I now invite Dr. Dr. Rajiv Naronha, Principal Consultant and Head, Strategic Capability Units, TCS, to deliver the keynote address for this session.
Very good morning.
Waiting for
Yes. Yes, Rajiv ji, we can see.
Yeah, okay. So, a very good morning and welcome. First of all, I would like to thank Father Augustine George, Dr. Desai, Dr. Ranpal, and also Dr. Baba Nyan Kumar, who connected me to this forum. It's it's a very nice feeling to be back sharing experiences from industry with the academia. And I've been doing it for a long time, and I think this is one more opportunity. Since this is a program on education 5.0, I thought what would make best sense would be to give our perspective on what is the trends around industrialization and how industry 5.0 has taken the hot seat today, and then look at what are the implications for academia and what is that you as academicians and you as professors and knowledge providers to different people would need to think about in the next few years. So before I start, let me go and share with you something called the 4C's, which I've been thinking of, and the 4C's are connected, committed, conscious, and courageous. So let me repeat: connected, committed, conscious, and courageous. Now, when I say connected, we are talking about emotionally connected people. When I say committed, socially committed human beings. When I say conscious, we are conscious of the environment. And when I see courageous, I mean ethically courageous. The courage to take the right decision in the spirit of what is good for us in an ecological sense. So when I say ecological sense, it is about what is good for me, what is good for the company, what is good for you as an individual, what is good for the environment as a whole, right? So that is how I would view this whole mindset of industry 5.0 or education 5.0, and that's the message I want to start with. Now, before I go ahead, these are my views, these are not my company's views, so please bear that in mind. Whatever I say is something which I have interpreted and I have. So let's reflect on this. There was a Nobel laureate by the name of Robert Schiller, and he said, we cannot wait till we have massive disruptions in the world before we prepare ourselves for fourth. We cannot wait for massive disruptions. We have to do it now. And this is what he said about 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. Right? And it is like saying that we cannot wait for a house to burn down before we buy insurance. We have to buy insurance before the house burns down. And therefore, fourth industrial revolution was a kind of an insurance for the future. And that's how even Nobel Prize winners, economists, etc. saw it. And they said it's important for the world. But, however, in doing all of this, there were some downsides, and that is what brings us to the next mindset, which is Industry 5.0. And I think education 5.0 has to always follow the industry trend, or industry and education go hand in hand, and that's how it is. So, and because industry depends on education for talent, depends on education for the main breadwinners of our organizations, I think it's important to and understand that there will definitely be some things which industry will expect and academia will deliver, academia will expect, industry will deliver, and so on. For the fifth industrial revolution, they say that creativity is a must. If you look at the Oxford Economics, they talk about creativity being must meet actual technology. So there has to be a synthesis between these two. And unless we are creative, we will end up in wrong consequences for the world. Now look at this data. This is the data on Standard and Poor. Try to look at what was the age of these companies. So if you take the average age in 1965, it was 32 years, which means companies lived for that many years before they, either got bought over or they got eliminated, they closed down, etc. Look at that. It has come down over the last few years, over the last few decades, from 32 years to 20 years, which means we have almost 65% of 500 has reduced by about 35%. What does it mean? It means that unless you are prepared for the current era, unless you are prepared for the current day, you will either get bought up by somebody, you will close down, or you will get bankrupt. So these are the kind of thoughts which came to my mind when I was preparing this presentation. Now let's go a little further. Now this is the age of convergence, and there are so many technologies. You take augmented artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, manufacturing, 3D manufacturing, drones, AR, VR, etc., etc. All of these are actually stitched together by three different, what we call as three different technologies. And if you look at it, it is cloud, big data, and Internet of Things, which are stitching all this together. And then we have what we call as the new world which is Industry 4.0. And 4.0 is something which helped us make a lot of change. So there was a lot of change, there was a lot of disruption, there was a lot of innovation across industries. So whether it is retail or automobile or delivery, it was telecom or banking or robotics, any industry, there were a lot of implications, there were a lot of changes, there was a lot of disruptions. And just to give you an example, if you look at retail, augmented reality experience is used in shopping for people to make a choice of product. There is click to ship, there is a click to ship kind of trend which is happening. There is interactive, socially connected displays in the retail stores. There are touch screens, there are so many apps available today. If you look at the automobile industry, you have autonomous cars, you have mobility as a service, and today we are moving into a economy where it is called the experience economy. So you have tire as a service. So even a mobile tire of an automobile, they offer it as a service. So companies are no longer interested in offering single products, separate products. They prefer to offer up services, a bundle of services around everything. So there is a services for tires, there is what we call as automobile as a service or mobility as a service, predictive maintenance. So there are so many trends. I will not go through all of these industries for the interest of time, but let me show you something here. This is a picture of a very large warehouse of Amazon, and it's about 10 to 15 football grounds if you put together, big playgrounds, stadiums, if you put them together, that is the kind of size of this. Now you might think that every product, and Amazon sells millions of products, every product is arranged in a certain specific place inside the godown, and people have to walk there kilometers and kilometers to pick up the product. You're wrong. They have automated it in such a beautiful way. If you look at this, at the bottom there are some orange and blue color robots. Robots are very small. They're just about few, not even a feet high. They go under these racks and pick up the rack which is required by the person who's packing and bring the rack to that person. So imagine, you can place the product which comes from your vendor in any bin. You can place in any bin, in any rack. There is no order there. But digitally the order is created in the mind of the computer. And if the person, let's say he wants a mirror, bathroom mirror or a shaving mirror, he simply says shaving mirror, and the robot goes to the nearest bin which has a shaving mirror and brings the entire stack. So this whole stack which you can see here, this rack which has so many things, would be picked up by the robot and brought to that. So that is the level of intelligence which is built, and I think this intelligence is what was different from, let's say, Industry 1.0 to Industry 4.0 or 5.0. So the kind of intelligence which came out was really manifested in Industry 4.0. Till 4.0, machines were not really nearly as intelligent as human beings, but over a period of time, by the time we moved from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, intelligence level of machines went up very, very much because of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and these kind of combination of skills which I talked about, combination of technologies. Now, did disruption happen only during Industry 4.0? No. Look at this conversation which happened so many decades ago in Ford Motors. I'm talking about the 1940s and 30s. So if you look at it, there was a conversation where the Henry Ford is telling, his union leader, Walter, how are you going to get those robots to pay the union dues? And those days, unions were a big thing in automotive. So he asked the leader, how do you think robots are going to pay? So he was kind of jokingly and kind of mockingly telling his union leader that your people are no longer going to be there, and it's all going to be done by robots. So who's going to pay the union dues for you? And then he says, Henry, how are you going to get them to buy your car? So he says, if people don't work in the factories, who's going to buy your car? So which was going around those. Yeah, am I audible now? Yeah, okay. So I've shared the screen. So I was just thinking, I hope you would have heard this conversation which I talked about. But let me quickly run you through these four, different stages or different, what we call as industry revolutions which happened. And I would call the first four as revolutions, and the fifth one is more of an evolution. That's how it is, because it's a mindset change, and evolution takes many, many centuries and decades. So evolution will happen over the years from now on. So the first industrial revolution was more about mechanization. It was driven by steam power, and it was driven mainly, by what we call as water power and steam power. Second industrial revolution was all about mass production, the assembly line, and so on. And in the second industrial revolution, we had railroads, we had creation of supply chain, we had iron and steel production. So all of these were driven, I would say, more by steam plus electrical power. So electricity was generated, etc. And then we came to the third industrial revolution, which was about 1950s, I would say 1950 to 1970. And here we talk about computer and connecting devices and automation. And then finally we talk about industry 4.0, where you looked at all the data which was generated from the third revolution, and you convert that, or you connect that to become information, creating cyber physical systems connected through industrial IoT, etc. So this is more or less what happened in the first four revolutions, and each revolution, if you see, is about half the time. So 100 became 50, 50 became 20, and then 20 took to about 10, and then 10 years now since we have industry 4.0. And industry 4.0 will continue to be the driver for production, driver for growth, driver for productivity, etc. But mindset is going to be different, and unless we change over this mindset to the fifth industrial revolution, or what we call as evolution, we are going to face a very, very tough situation on earth. And that's why I said the four C's: being connected, being committed, being conscious, and being courageous. So this is the background to what I wanted to start my presentation with. And if you look at industry 4.0, what was the mindset? The mindset was single use. The moment your cartridge is getting over, the printer will remind you to buy a new cartridge. The moment your water purifier cartridge is getting over, it will remind you. Or the moment your milk is getting over. So it was all about single use, but that's not good for the earth, because a lot of wastage. So we were creating what they call as a consumption economy by industry 4.0. There was a lot of progress, but there was also regression happening. And when I say regression, on certain socially good things, emotionally good things, etc. Waste, both in food and industry, as a highest level, 40% wastage. Now in industry 5.0, we will see what that will be. So 40% was the wastage on floors, shop floors, in the food. If you see, about 75% of the crop doesn't reach stage 2 production, and it used to get wasted. If you look at smoke emissions, you look at the kind of smogs in cities like Bangalore or cities like Delhi, etc. It really shows that we are not really caring about this environment. Growing products are growing, food is being produced, things are being produced without being sold. Millions of goods are not sold, and they are just scrapped because they don't want to reduce the price and sell it, and that's really a waste. 54% of wood packaging, if you see, is thrown after one use, and 75% of cardboard. And I think each one of us has a role to play in the last one, because we also don't reuse many of these packagings. We just throw it off, or we dump it down and throw it in the garbage. But the 5.0 mindset is about drive for purpose and inclusion. So we are saying that we should talk about profit plus progress. It is not just progress. It is not just profit plus progress, which has been the industry 4.0, but it is purpose plus inclusion. And second is the means. What is the means? The means is through processes and frameworks, industry 5.0. We will commit to sharing data and information. So all of you who would have heard that Elon Musk has even given up his rights to some of the what we call as making it open to the world to go and adopt, and they brought in some of the first. So I think his was one of the first companies with industry 4.0 expertise, but a 5.0 mindset. And before even the authors of Michael Rada, who wrote this paper on Industry 5.0 in about 2015, even before that, Elon Musk had moved in this direction. Sustainable is the next, what we call as way of looking at it, the mindset. Economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable. And then we are saying that by doing all of this, we can save approximately 475 billion US dollars annually in all of this industry 5.0 adoption, which is half a trillion dollars. And if you say half a trillion dollars over a 10-year period, it is $5 trillion, which is huge. And that is the kind of potential for agile, being flexible in time and space. Even time is a resource. Even time is a resource for us in industry 5.0, which we need to save, we need to use productively, we need to use benefit entire universe. And then
Mm-hmm.
we are talking about learning from failure. There is nothing like failure, but there is only feedback which we get from the failures which we have, right? And finally, it's all about being inquiring, and all about seeking constantly to find new ways and start where others end, actually. So that's the mindset change which we're talking about in industry 5.0. Now, what is the implication of change? If you look at the kind of news articles and reports we used to get during the fourth industrial revolution, it talks about how robots are eating desperately needed, and things like that. It talks about job losses. It talked about decluttering the hype around job losses. So there were so many things. So these are two blogs I wrote long back in 2018, and I talked about job shifts. That instead of worrying about job losses, we should worry about job shifts. And this was my messaging to the colleges in 6 years ago. And when I spoke to principals about 6 years ago, I told them, don't worry about the job loss. Just worry about how do you shift, and how do you make that shift from certain kinds of jobs to the other, and train your students so that they are ready for the next wave of requirements from industries. Second is, there was a lot of unnecessary hype about job losses, and then I wrote another blog called, these are all 5-6 years old now, but if you look at the headlines those days, they all talked about how industry is and you talk about today, industry is poised to take advantage. Singapore government, India says we cannot miss the fourth industrial. So we are still this. These are all last week's headlines. The last two which I showed you, they were just 2-3 weeks back. They have come in paper. So if you look at all these are still talking about the potential of 4.0. Even today, if you open the newspapers, you will hear about it. But 4.0 moving forward will have to be along with 5.0. So it is not that 4.0 has ended and 5.0 has started. It is not like a number system. It is just a mindset shift now from one kind of operating model for the world to another kind. And here we are talking about lots of machines replacing work for people. And now we are saying in the future, it is not man or man versus machine, but is man working together with machine, which really is going to make the difference in the 5.0 world. Look at implications of 5.0. What are the messages? We are talking about green frontier. We are talking about drought emergency. We are talking about energy crisis. We are talking about the risks which we have, increase in flash floods, climate change. So all of these were actually the reasons why 5.0 mindset was required, because you can keep progressing, but progressing on one dimension and regressing on many dimensions is what the world doesn't want. The world wants progress, the world wants prosperity, the world wants luxury, but at the same time we have to do it in a sustainable manner, inclusive manner. Gender diversity, gender disparity should not be there. Similarly, you should not have economic disparities the way it is today. If you look at the data during the pandemic, there were more than 5 billion people, sorry, 5 million, 50 million people who moved from the middle class to below. 50 million people. And there were more than 130 million people who had some kind of an impact on their incomes, on their earnings, etc. So these are the kind of disparities which you look at the gender participation in industry. It is much lower than what the female participation is much lower than what it could be, and therefore there is a need to push this up. So all of these are captured in the 5.0 mindset. Now let us shift gears to what is more relevant based on whatever I spoke for the academia. So what is it for academia? What does it mean for colleges? What does it mean for principals, teachers? So we'll shift gears here and we look at what are the jobs of the future. Now if you look at this data point, 2018 about 29% of the jobs were performed by machines, whereas in 2025 about 50+% or maybe even 60% of the jobs will be performed by machines, which means lesser jobs for human beings, more free time. So what it means is the lesser jobs doesn't mean that you have less people working. It means you give less time for people to work, more free time, let them think, that should be the kind of spirit. So both industry and academia needs to think in a different way in the future if we want to have a better future for our planet and we want to have a better future for our people. Now what is it? You will have more jobs in healthcare, you will have more jobs in care services, more jobs in education. This is a study which was done recently by World Economic Forum through Accenture and a couple of other organizations, and they said there are many more jobs going to be there in these areas, and this is similar trend is going to be seen in the developing nations. So although this data initially was collected for that, I'll come to this on the next slide. And if you see, you will have more productive GDPs, you will have better performance, you will have better all of these dimensions which we talk about are going to be better. If you look at growing versus declining jobs, there was a 2018 study which was done by World Economic Forum, and look at the right side. You see that all of these jobs are actually declining. Less and less opportunities for people, data entry clerks, because today you can scan data, you can just convert data automatically. If I upload a scan form in my system for claiming a bill, it simply takes the bill. I don't even have to type out anything. I don't have to type my mobile number, anything. The moment I put the bill scanned copy into my system automatically knows what is the invoice, what am I raising it for. It's a mobile bill, it's a travel bill, it's a taxi bill. It automatically populates everything. I don't need somebody to enter the data at all. So similarly, many of these right hand side jobs are declining, and these were the ones which have been emerging. So if you see on the left side, these are all jobs which are very common today. Many jobs were not there in 2015, 14, now they are all there, and this is what was predicted and I shared with many of my presentations in the past. Now if you look at today, for developing countries, that time they said 60 million people will lose jobs, but actually 60 million people lost jobs, but 133 million people got new jobs, new roles, new jobs. So that was why I said, do not worry about job losses, worry about how do you shift people from right hand to left hand. How do you shift people from the right side of this table to the left side in terms of skills, in terms of capabilities, in terms of learning, in terms of curriculum, etc. Coming to the next one, the recent the jobs all involve technology, digital, sales, brand management, financial. So these are the categories of jobs which were created. These were the categories under which various jobs were created, and over a period of 5 years we have seen definitely a clear trend around creating these jobs. Look at the next one. So the next one is all about what is today. So if you look at today in 2022, this is for developing countries like India, Brazil, China. This is the data taken. They found that agriculture, forestry, fishing, these are the ones which are going to grow the most in between now and 2030. Supply chain is the next one, retail and supply chain, production of consumer goods, engineering and construction, education. So unlike US where education and care are the top, personal care, well-being, here you see personal care and well-being are at the bottom, and the education is somewhere at number 5. But if you see the developed countries like US or Germany or Japan, there these categories are in the top 4 or top 5. Okay, so the world is slightly different in focus. So the Western world is focused more on personal care, healthcare, well-being, education, training, whereas the developing countries are going to have more jobs in these areas. Fortunately, education is still at the top. Government and public sector still going to play a big role. And if you see, the other areas are all very, very small. There are much smaller growth compared to this. So this is an important input for principals, for colleges, and academic planners to see what kind of future requirements are there from the industry. How do you prepare people for these kind of jobs, etc. Now coming to the actually how do we get there? I thought of how do we get there? Is there some messaging I can give for today's presentation? So I looked at World Economic Forum, McKinsey studies, LinkedIn studies, and I tried to put together what are they saying? What is the pattern? You look at about 20-25 studies and you'll find a pattern. So the pattern is complex problem solving. The world is becoming more and more complex. There are too many dots to be connected. It is no longer simple problem solving. So I think our future generations would need this in a big way. And if we are able to prove that we are doing complex problem solving in a very focused manner, I think we can really help our students to reach that place. They are very good technically, they are very good in the subject, but when they have to solve any complex problem, they struggle. And this is what we have observed even in our organizations. Second is critical thinking. Now you cannot do the work today without critical thinking, especially when you move to level 2, level 3 manager roles. As a manager, as a team leader, as a business leader, critical thinking is very, very important. And it's also important for people who are not working in organizations. They are working on their own, they are even housewives. They need to do critical thinking, because if you look at it, people fall victim to WhatsApp messages, fake news. By being able to critically analyze, only you can decide which is fake news and which is not fake news. So there are certain strategies which critical thinking helps. Third, I looked at creativity, and no better day today than to be creative than today. No better day to be creative than today. And I think this is the need of the hour. So complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, all start with C. I don't know why, but something says all three are very important for this. And then you have emotional intelligence. Then we come to the next, which is collaboration. So one more C is collaboration, working together. Fifth one is service orientation, because we are moving towards an experience economy. Everything's going to be experience based. Manufacturing will happen. There'll be more robots doing work along with men, but the primary industry economy is going to be service, right? And if you look at negotiation, because we have to really make alliances, partnerships, we have to negotiate better, and judgment and decision making. So these are the, I would say, top, what we can call as are the critical competencies, I would call them, which industry 5.0 needs. And these are driven from 4.0, but in the 5.0 world, you need to really continue and you need to really create this. Now, if you look at it, I tried to analyze these more in detail, and what I found is that if you cluster, they are all clustered. There are 3 different clusters which I found. The first cluster is what we can say that, the cluster which is for decision making, right? And the second cluster is for working together. And if you see, these are all working together, these are all making right decisions. And finally, there is something which we call as enabling. You cannot do the first 2 if you don't have the third. And I think that's the way you should look at it. So cognitive flexibility, or my ability to switch from one kind of work to the other kind of work, the ability to think, and the ability to be sensitive to others, to be emotionally connected, to understand people and to motivate them. I need the bottom two, otherwise it's very difficult. I can have all of this in good B schools, but if I don't develop these two at the bottom, then I have a serious problem. So I think the reflection from whatever I spoke, if I have to summarize it, I spoke about what is the mindset today, how technology is making a drastic shift in our organizations, in our industries, and in our lives. So it is having a positive impact on one side, it's having a negative impact. And therefore, the mindset is 5.0, and the 5.0 mindset feeds into education 5.0 as a need. So if you look at reflection, the world is changing. Business models based on sustainability, and we are also talking about strategic goals. So developmental goals. So we are saying as sustainable developmental goals are a must for every organization today. So every organization who comes to us as a company is asking, how do I develop sustainable goals along with my IT implementation? Tell me, help me out. They go to all the service industry organizations in IT and ask them, how do you create sustainable goals? How do you ensure that we are able to work in ways and means which are better for the planet, better for, so ecological, what we call as focus and drive is what they're looking for. Second is, in the coming decade, the change is faster than all the change which happened so far in the last century. So if you take the next 10 years, the kind of change we will see in next 10 years is much bigger than entire 100 years of change which happened. And I think we all, being from, most of us would be probably from Gen Y or Gen X, and we would have seen this kind of change, but 100 years of change is much less than next 10 years of change. Third one is, we are sailing through what is called an experience economy. So everything is like a service. Experience economy, you companies don't want to just sell you a product. They want to sell you a bundle. They want to sell you a what we call overall system. They want to sell you a solution which they can continuously work with you. So it's not like I sell you something today and it's done. That is how you have a huge relationship to be built by the companies. Like in the 5.0 world, companies vision is driven. Companies are going to be vision driven and values based, and that is what we heard all of the leaders talking today, that how we have to be different, how we have to talk about mission, and how do we talk about purpose, and how do we talk about our inclusivity going up. The fifth one is about organization and individuals must change. So it is not just the organizations which need to change, the individuals also need to change, their mindset needs to be different, because after all it's the individuals which make organizations. Man with machine, man along with machine, rather than man versus machine and man or machine. It is not man or machine, man and machine. It is man with machine, and therefore we will have teams in the future might have 5 humans and 4 robots, and each one will have a role. So you will soon see, and we have already started seeing organizational charts with Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z, and chatbot Y, A, B, C. So chatbots also have a role to play in teams, and they will play a role with human beings will play a role. But I think it's a balance between the two. 50% of the population in the next 5 years will have part-time employment. So you will notice this is a big change to prepare your students for. How do you prepare your students? Last month I read about a paper which said the 2-year MBA is going to be extinct, or 2 years MBA won't even be there in the next 10 years. Please think about it. Is there going to be a 2-year MBA in 10 years time? I think no. That's what the prediction says. And if we look at it, then what are we doing to create the next generation? And I think with education policy, the new national education policy of 2020, I think we will definitely move towards that stage, and we might not need a 2-year MBA. We might just need a 1-year preparatory course, or we might need multiple small nano learnings to create future leaders, not necessarily an MBA or a PhD, etc. PhD may be good for teaching, but may not be good. So we have to think of all these situations based on what we are seeing. We will tide over the skills, and we will get the skills, we will prepare people, but the competencies which I talked about, the competencies which I expressed or mentioned in the previous slides, is what will really make the difference. The skills they will learn, but the competencies will what differentiate the best from the rest, right? And then we are going to be powered ahead by Industry 4.0 in the coming days, but we are going to be moderated by Industry 5.0 mindset. So 4.0 is continuing, it is not over, it will continue to take us till the next revolution comes, because we talked about steam power, then we talked about electrical power, then we talked about electronic power, then we talked about the power of artificial intelligence. So all of these together, till the next new power comes in, the new technology comes in, we will continue with Industry 4.0, and we will have to live with this mindset of Industry 5.0 for us to have a better world. And I think many of these things I captured in some of my, I published a book in our personal lives, and I think this is like an evergreen book. It will never get extinct, because all experiences will be kind of living for many many years. And if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can read it free of cost, or you can look at for it in Amazon. And I would invite you to read my blogspot HR Vitamins. I've written about 150 plus or 180 plus different posts over the last 10 years. And also on my LinkedIn blog, people who are interested can reach out. We do a lot of work with academia in my organization, in my role, and constantly connected with the academia. So that's the message I had for today. I hope it made some sense to y'all, and thank you very much. Have a great day ahead.